Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. I'm Joey Calvo. We are on YouTube as well as PhillyCAM TV and WPPM-LP radio. Check out our website, lifewithjoeycalvo.website, where you can check out our website. Okay, getting interesting. All right, check out the website, lifewithjoeycalvo.website, where you can find out about previous episodes, support the podcast, merchandise shop, purchase tickets to life events. Today's guest, we have Mark Astor. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be with you, Joey. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Okay, and so explain who Mark Astor is, how he got to where we're at right now.
Okay, so I'm an attorney. I am based in Palm Beach County, Florida, which is the east coast of Florida, about an hour north of Miami. And I'm a partner. My wife is my partner in our law firm, and you can see the name of the firm over there. Mm-hmm. The mission of our firm is to save families whose loved ones are suffering from substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery. So we speak to families from all over the country and occasionally outside of the country. And they call us because they have an adult child with a long history of drug use, mental illness, treatment that doesn't work if they'll even go. They're probably med non-compliant. They may well have been a guest of the state through either the criminal justice system or the mental health system, and maybe even an overdose. And they call us to fix that problem. That's what we do.
Okay. And so, but tell us your background as well in reference to how you got to where you're at.
Okay. So this is my 32nd year of practicing law. Hard to believe, but time does fly as you get older. I started off my legal career actually in 1993. I was a student intern at the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office here. And as an intern, I was allowed to do everything, including trying cases. Now, I will tell you, Joey, I have to confess, I was not real passionate about the law when I went to law school. And I really didn't get a lot of the stuff they were teaching us. It didn't seem to make any sense. I was an okay student. I was in the top half of the class. So that means I wasn't far off the bottom half. But, you know, I guess I was in the top 40%, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then I got a chance to intern with the state attorney's office. And I really did that because I thought, you know, I'd be a well-rounded law student if I didn't, you know, if I was able to get a little trial experience. Well, turns out 5 minutes into my first real trial, I knew this is where I was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And for me, everything after that just started to make sense. All the things I'd learned in law school with regards to trying cases and rules of evidence and things of that nature suddenly made sense. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And my passion for the law was sort of somewhat reignited. Long story short is they ended up hiring me as a full-time assistant state attorney, and I went back there in 1994 and remained there until 1999. Mm-hmm. During my 5 years there, I did just over 200 jury trials. So I probably tried another couple of hundred non-jury trials, but that's an incredible amount of jury trials to do in a very short period of time. I basically spent 5 years doing nothing but trying cases. So I worked on weekends, I worked at night. But I loved trying cases, and I got pretty damn good at it. But here's what I realized pretty quickly. You know, when you are a young lawyer, especially when you're a prosecutor, you yield a certain amount of power. You're pretty gung-ho. Let's lock up all the bad guys. But what I started to notice pretty quickly was that I was seeing the same faces over and over again. Now, these days in our criminal justice system here in Florida, Joey, we have what I refer to as diversionary courts. Mm-hmm. We have drug court, mental health court, veterans court, courts that are designed specifically to address certain behavioral health issues, mm-hmm. get these people into treatment, get them out of the system, and then they can move on with their lives. The cases get dropped, and it's a win-win for everybody. Well, back in the 90s, when I was a prosecutor, and I was a prosecutor right around the time of the O.J. Simpson case, mm-hmm. and actually got interviewed for the O.J. case when I had a lot more hair and there was a lot less of me. Mm-hmm. And the mandate back in the 90s, and it's still the mandate today in Florida's criminal justice system, is to punish first, and to rehabilitate second. Well, if you've got nowhere else to put them, if you have no diversionary courts in the 90s, and the mandate is to punish them, eventually when people kept coming back, that's what we did. We just locked them up for as long as we could. There was nothing else. You know, if I put you on probation and you violate and you get released and you violate again, well, what am I supposed to do with you? At that point, I got no choice. I'm going to ask the judge to lock you up, get you off the streets as long as we can. And then, you know, eventually you get released and we'll see what, you know, see where the chips fall. But in 1999, I left. I was really burned out. I did some defense work. I made a lot more money, but I was completely miserable. I also got married at 34. I was divorced at 35. And for a long period of time, my life sort of spiraled out of control. I wasn't practicing law. I was miserable. And in 2004, I took a year off. And I went back to school for a year up in Washington, D.C. I got my master's in law. I worked on a presidential campaign for a year and really spent that year trying to figure my life out. Anyway, the candidate I worked for didn't win, so I had to come home. In 2012, I took what money I had left, because I'd probably wasted most of it, and I ran off to California. And I spent 3 years in California, burning through my money, chasing pretty girls, and failing the California bar exam. Ultimately, I failed it 3 times, but I failed it twice in the 3 years I was there. After 3 years, I was broke, had to come home. I studied for the bar one more time while I was here in Florida, flew back, took the exam, found out I'd gotten within a percentage point, but still failed it. And at that point, I said, maybe I'm just not supposed to be there, because I'd spent a year, you know, in total studying for the California bar exam and couldn't seem to get through it. I studied for the Florida bar for about 3 weeks. So not that I'm particularly smart. It's just that for some reason I couldn't pass the damn bar exam out there. So I had to come home because I couldn't make a living. And then I met somebody that basically changed the entire trajectory of my life. So I got invited to a breakfast meeting one morning down in the Gables, which is about an hour and a half south of me. And the meeting was at 7:30. So I think I was up by 4 or 4:30 to get down there in time. And there was a gentleman there who was a keynote speaker. His name is R. John Robbins. And R. John Robbins founded a company called How to Manage a Small Law Firm. And he was doing a presentation to about a group of 20 lawyers about the one thing they don't teach any law student at any law school, frankly, anywhere in the country. And that is the business side of practice in law. That really resonated with me because I come from somewhat humble beginnings, Joey. My dad left school at 14, or I'm out at 16. So going to law school was a really big deal. I mean, it never happened in our family. No one had even gotten out of high school. So becoming a lawyer was a really proud moment for my parents, especially my dad. But my father was an entrepreneur, and he built businesses, and some worked, some didn't. Some made money, and somebody lost his you-know-what on. So when I heard about the idea of being an entrepreneurial lawyer and running a law firm like a business, that resonated with me. And after I saw him do his thing and talk to these 20 lawyers who, you know, were really just out of jerks to him, because, I mean, that's what most lawyers are anyway. I hate to say it, but that's why nobody likes us. And I begged him for a job, and he hired me. And I spent a year there learning about the business side of practicing law. But here's what I didn't know when I went to work for him, Joey, was that his company at their very foundation is actually a personal growth company for lawyers. And they believe that financial growth must be preceded by personal growth. And I learned 2 very important things while I was there. Number one, the reason that I was, you know, miserable and had nobody special in my life, and I was broke, was because I'd failed to take 100% responsibility for both my personal and professional life. The other thing I learned was that if I was going to start my own law firm, which I at that point wanted to do, I was going to have to find a group of people that I could help, or I wasn't going to be passionate about doing it. And I had close family members and friends who had these issues, and there was nobody else out there helping them. Nobody had built a law firm doing just this work. And so in February of 2016, while I was still broke, I sat down at the local library here and opened up my own law firm. And, you know, I created a spreadsheet. I called as many people as I could think of or I could find on my phone. I mean, I hadn't lived in Florida in 3 years. I hadn't practiced law in probably close to 5. And so I would just go and have lunch or coffee with anybody that would listen to me. I had really cheap business cards made at Vistaprint, and I ran around to treatment centers for a couple of months. And I did not get a call on a behavioral health case, the kind of cases that we get now, for 14 months. 11 months in, my father unexpectedly passed, so I had to scramble to pay for a funeral. So in the meantime, I took other kinds of cases. I represented a student athlete who got himself in a bit of hot water with a female student. I took criminal cases. I co-counseled family law cases with a friend from law school. I would take anything that I could because I needed to pay my bills. And by 2017, I had enough money to get a really small office, and I met my now wife. Now, my wife had lived in up in Massachusetts in the Boston area, practicing guardianship law, and we figured we could take the guardianship statute, which was traditionally used for elderly people, and apply it to some of the cases that we were working on. And for the next 6 years, it was just the two of us working 8 days a week and 25 hours a day, doing sales, marketing, meeting with clients, drafting pleadings, running to court. You name it, we did it. And I still typically work 6 or even 7 days a week, depending on, how busy we are. But for 7 years, we hustled, and it's been only the last 3 years did the business really take off like a rocket. And we've been able to hire staff. So now we have a team of 15 people. I have people in intake, which means I can sit here and have a conversation with you, Joey, without the phone blowing up. Because there were times when it did blow up, for everything. Sometimes it was people calling because they couldn't pay my rent and wanted to know when they were getting a check. There was a time when I used to cry because the phone didn't ring, and there were also times where the phone didn't stop ringing, and I used to cry because I couldn't get any work done. So that has been my journey for the last, we're now 10 and a half years in. So that's my story.
Okay. All right. So you started out. You went to law school. You worked your way up and had your downfalls and stuff, and then over the past couple of years, you came back and rebuilt your life and made it better. So mainly with your practice, what actual fields do you actually cover in reference to when people come to you?
So we are working with families where there is typically an adult child who has either a drug issue, a mental health issue, or these days a combination thereof. And we use 3 statutes here in Florida to get families varying degrees of control over what is typically an out of control situation. It can be something as simple as just getting an emergency order to get somebody picked up off the streets and taken to a receiving facility to be held for 72 hours so they can get assessed and stabilized. That normally is followed by some type of court hearing where we want to send somebody to treatment for the next 3 months. But it could also include not only getting them into treatment, but maybe I need access to their medical records so I can see what's going on. I need to restrict their ability to travel so they don't get on a plane and leave, which can happen, although they walk out of treatment, or that maybe they have some financial interests I need to take control of. 1, so they don't blow the money, but 2, so I can pay their bills like rent, car payments, electricity bills, cell phone bills, right? So there's a myriad of things that we can do to give a family control. And that's what they come to us for, the control, so they can finally make the decision that their loved one's not able to make because they have a behavioral health issue, which is basically hijacked their mind, which renders them not only unable to make the decision to save themselves, but many times unable to even appreciate the fact that they have a disease and that they need help. Their life's out of control and they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them.
Okay.
And that's what we do. We help to save the family by starting off saving their loved one.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to chat a little bit more with
Great.
Mark Astor.
Thanks,
So
Joey.
hold on one moment. Involuntarily. We are back, and we are back with Mark Astor. And so, um, during the time that um, had your ups and downs, what kind of thoughts were really running through your mind?
Yeah, that is such a great question, Joey. It's here I was. I'm going to be 60 in January. I was probably 47. I was about 47 when I went to work for How to Manage.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, am I ever going to really make it? I mean, here I was, a very, very skilled trial lawyer, with a lot of experience. I've tried everything from petty theft to capital murder. Mm-hmm. Probably was the most successful student intern they had ever. I tried a dozen jury trials as a law student. That had never been done before. I also did an appeal. I did the oral argument for an appellate case. That had never been done. I'm willing to bet it's probably never been done since. So I had all these wonderful skills. I was a good lawyer, and I was broke. I had a failed marriage. I was living at home with my parents. Although when I went to work for How to Manage in Miami, I was living in my brother's spare room. Mm-hmm. I had nothing to show for any of it. And I just said to myself, is it ever going to change? And I think the most freeing moment for me was when I decided I was going to go finally and open up my own law firm business. That was a cathartic experience for me, because I finally felt like, okay, I'm finally going to do this. I'm going to be my own man, and I'm going to answer to absolutely nobody. I'm going to be responsible for my successes, and I'm going to be responsible for things if they go, if they don't go so well. And I was very determined. I mean, I had nobody in my life. I had no money. I was back home living with my parents. My father was seriously ill. And I just said, I'm going to do this. And I just hustled, and I found this internal drive to build a better life. I really did. And when my father passed, there was no trust fund, no big insurance policy. There was nothing. I maxed out all my credit cards to pay for his funeral. Mm-hmm. And I had to buy 2 plots, because obviously I had to buy a plot for my mom so that when she passed, she could lay next to my dad. I financed that over 5 years and paid it off on time. I made 60 payments every month for 5 years. I'd send the finance company a check for about $150 so that when my mother passed, she could lie next to my dad. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the difference between winning and losing, right? There's a very famous scene, I think it's in Rocky IV, where Rocky's outside with his son, and the son's telling him he shouldn't fight. Mm-hmm. Rocky tells him in no uncertain terms that life is not about how hard you can hit. Mm-hmm. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And that's how winning is done. And so I just decided I wanted to win, and I wanted to win more than I was willing to, that I wanted to lose. Mm-hmm. So that has been, my motto ever since. And I married my now wife 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. The single best decision I've ever made, because in 2017, when I met her and I was still a confirmed bachelor, I promised her I would never get married again. And then I did get married, and I couldn't have built my business without her. She's a brilliant lawyer in her own right, but she's also a brilliant business lady, and she has, she's my rock. Mm-hmm. So that's how winning's done, Joey. There's, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't want no handouts. I don't want to owe nobody. I don't use credit cards. I use debit cards. If I can't afford it, I don't buy it. It's that simple. I got no debt, none. I pay my bills on time. I pay my taxes every single month. Mm-hmm. My accountant takes about 33.33% right out of my paycheck every month. And every month I send Uncle Sam a check. Mm-hmm. That's it. And what I have left over, well, I use it to pay my bills and put a few shekels in a savings account. That's it. And I sleep well at night, but I'm not done. There's a lot more people that need my help. And that's my goal, to help as many families as we possibly can. So
okay, so that answered my next question. What are we looking at in the next 5 years?
Yeah.
So how can people reach out to you?
Well, they can find us on the web, on the internet. So my main website is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. Or if you Google my name. So one of the other things I like to do, Joe, is I believe strongly that people should be able to get the information they need and not have to call a lawyer to get it, and they should get the right information. So if you Google my name, yeah, thank you for that. If you Google my name, you'll find we have a YouTube channel. There are 1,200 videos on YouTube, and they're based on real cases, my real world experience with how we handle these cases. I also have a book that I wrote all about Florida's Marchman Act. If you go to the mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com and go to resources, you'll see 2 books. The newest one is the book all about the Marchman Act, and it's 9 chapters written, and there's additional video content, and it's free. You just got to give us your name and email, and we'll send it to you. So that's how you find me. I'm easy to find.
All right. All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. You're welcome to come back on at any time. Thank you, everybody, for watching the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. God bless you all.